I helped plan my sister's wedding before discovering the groom was also dating me. The moment I realized the man I'd been seeing for 8 months was about to marry my sister, he was standing at the altar in the venue I had personally booked for him. Let me back up. My name is Nadia. I'm 27. I work in event planning, which is genuinely hilarious in retrospect, and up until about 4 months ago, I thought I was finally in a good place in my life. New city, new apartment, a job I actually liked, a guy I thought I was falling for, and a sister who I'd been trying to rebuild a relationship with after years of distance. Three of those things turned out to be the same person's manipulation. I moved to Charlotte from Raleigh about a year and a half ago. My company transferred me, and honestly, I needed the change. My sister Dana had been living in Charlotte for 3 years already. We were never super close growing up. She's 4 years older than me, and when you're kids, that gap feels enormous. By the time I was interesting, she was already gone, college then a job then her own life. We'd fallen into the kind of relationship where you text on birthdays and call on holidays and tell yourself you'll do better about visiting. When I moved to Charlotte, she was excited, like genuinely excited. She took me to dinner my first weekend, helped me pick out furniture, introduced me to her friends. It was more time together than we'd spent in years, and I remember thinking, maybe this is the version of us we were always supposed to be. About 2 months after I moved, Dana mentioned she'd started seeing someone. His name was Caleb Merritt. She said they'd met through a mutual friend at some charity event, that he was in commercial real estate, that he was smart and kind and a little reserved but in a way that felt steady rather than cold. She showed me a photo. He was handsome in a clean-cut way, dark hair, easy smile, the kind of face that reads trustworthy immediately. I told her he seemed great. She said she'd introduce us soon. A month after that, a coworker of mine invited a group of us to a rooftop happy hour downtown. I almost didn't go because I'd had a long week and my couch was calling me. But my friend Priya basically guilt-tripped me into it, and I showed up in the same jeans I'd worn to work, and I met a man named Caleb at the bar. Not Caleb Merritt, just Caleb. Caleb Park, he told me. He was there with a friend from his firm, was what he said. We talked for almost 2 hours. He was funny in a quiet way, the kind of funny where you don't realize he's made a joke until 3 seconds after he says it. He asked real questions, the kind that made you feel like he was actually listening. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number, and I'd given it to him without hesitating. He texted me that same night, "Good meeting you, same time next week?" I texted back yes before I'd even put my phone down. I know what you're thinking, but I want to be very clear about something. Dana had shown me one photo of her boyfriend taken at a distance, slightly blurry because she'd grabbed it from someone else's Instagram, and Caleb Park, the man I met at that rooftop bar, told me his last name was Park. Different last name, different context, different world entirely. My brain had no reason to connect them. We went on our first actual date 9 days after the rooftop bar. He took me to this small Italian place in Noda that had no storefront, just a wooden door and a handwritten menu, and I remember thinking whoever found this restaurant either really knows Charlotte or really researched me. The food was incredible, the conversation was better. By the second date, I was already telling Priya I thought this might actually be something. By the sixth date, I was pretty sure I was right. He was attentive without being suffocating. He remembered things I mentioned in passing weeks later. He showed up to help me move furniture without being asked when I mentioned my couch was in the wrong spot. He texted good morning most days and never once made me feel anxious about where things stood. I'm telling you all of this because I need you to understand that this wasn't a situation where I missed obvious signs. He wasn't distant or shady or inconsistent. He was deliberate. Everything he did was deliberate. About 4 months into us dating, Dana called me one Sunday morning while I was making coffee. "I need your professional help," she said, and she sounded genuinely giddy. "Caleb proposed last night." I screamed. Actual screaming. I made her tell me every detail, the ring, where he did it, what she said, how she felt. We were on the phone for 45 minutes. I was so happy for her I cried a little, which I would normally be embarrassed about, but honestly, it felt like proof that we'd actually become close again. She asked me to help plan the wedding. "You literally do this for a living," she said. "And I trust you more than anyone, please." I said yes immediately. The thing about being an event planner is that you have a whole mental database of vendors, venues, florists, caterers, photographers, DJs. You know who's reliable and who sounds great on the phone but ghosts you 3 weeks out. I started pulling together options for Dana within a week. She told me the basics. She wanted something romantic, not too formal, maybe 200 guests, ideally outdoor with outdoor elements. Fall or early spring. We met for dinner the following Friday, just the two of us, to start going through options, venues, estimated costs, availability windows, pros and cons. Dana was glowing. Like actually luminous in the way people get when something enormous and good has happened to them. "I can't wait for you to meet Caleb," she said at one point. "I feel like you two are going to get along so well. He's been asking about you." I remember smiling at that. "When am I finally meeting him?" I asked. "He has this deal he's trying to close the next couple weeks," she said. "He's been slammed, but soon." We spent 3 hours going through the folder that night. By the time we left the restaurant, she'd narrowed it down to 4 venues she wanted to visit. I reached out to all of them the next morning and scheduled tours for the following 2 weekends. Meanwhile, Caleb Park and I went to a Hornets game that Wednesday. He bought me a jersey. We argued about basketball for 2 hours. He dropped me off and kissed me at my door, and I remember standing in my hallway afterward just smiling at nothing. I'm still sick about it. The first venue tour Dana and I went on was a converted textile mill about 20 minutes outside of Charlotte. Beautiful space, exposed brick, wooden beams, a courtyard with string lights. Dana was interested but not convinced. The second one was a vineyard that had a waiting list, so long it wasn't even worth discussing. The third was a renovated estate with a garden that made Dana stop in the middle of the tour and just stand there quietly. "This is it," she said. "This is exactly it." I called the coordinator the next morning. Dates, deposits, the whole conversation. Dana wanted a late October wedding, which was tight but not impossible. There was one Saturday available, October 19th. I called Dana with the news. She called Caleb. Caleb called me. I missed the call because I was on another line. He left a voicemail. "Hey Nadia, it's Caleb. Dana gave me your number. Just wanted to say thank you for everything you're doing. Really, she's so happy. I'm going to make sure she stays that way." I listened to it twice and thought that was genuinely sweet. I texted my Caleb that night about something completely unrelated, some dumb video I'd seen, and he responded immediately, and we went back and forth for an hour, and I went to sleep thinking about him. That is where my head was. The wedding planning moved fast after that. Dana was decisive, which made everything easier. She knew her colors. Dusty rose and sage green. She had a photographer in mind, someone she'd followed on Instagram for years. She wanted a live band, not a DJ. She wanted a florist who worked with dried arrangements mixed with fresh flowers. She wanted a menu that felt like comfort food but elevated. I was in my element. I love this work. I love the logistics, the coordination, the puzzle of making someone's specific vision match reality. And doing it for Dana felt like something more than professional. It felt like we were building something between us two. Every meeting, every decision, every text chain about table linens or vow phrasing, it was time together. She'd mention Caleb constantly through all of it. How excited he was, how he'd looked up the vineyard online and approved, how he'd cried when she showed him the sample invitation design. I built a whole picture of this man in my head from those conversations. Stable, devoted, someone who showed up for her. I want to be really clear about the timeline here, because the overlap is what makes this so hard to talk about. I was still actively dating my Caleb through all of this. We'd been together 8 months at this point. I thought I was falling in love with him. He had a key to my apartment. He kept a hoodie on my couch. We'd talked, not super concretely, but genuinely, about what the next year might look like. And then came the engagement party. Dana had decided on a small one, just close family and friends at her place. She asked me to help set it up, which of course I did. I came over the afternoon before to help arrange everything: flowers I'd ordered, a charcuterie setup, a champagne tower because Dana had always wanted one, and I told her an engagement party was exactly the right occasion. I remember being in her kitchen around 4 o'clock unwrapping cheese when I heard the front door open, Dana's voice. And a man's voice. "She's in the kitchen," Dana said. I turned around and Caleb walked in. My Caleb, not a man who looked like him. Not a coincidence of similar features. Him, the exact same face, the exact same way he held his shoulders, the exact same slight upturn at the corner of his mouth when he was about to say something. I felt the floor tilt. He saw me and his face did something I'd never seen it do before. Just for a second, less than a second, something moved through it. Not surprise. Something more controlled than surprise, more like a recalculation. Then he smiled. "Easy and natural, Nadia," he said, like he'd been looking forward to meeting me. "Dana talks about you constantly." I said something. I don't know what. My mouth was moving and words were coming out, but my brain had gone completely offline. Dana was watching us, beaming, clearly delighted at her two favorite people finally meeting. He walked over and hugged me, like we were strangers, a polite, brief, appropriate hug. And when his head was near mine, he said very quietly, in a voice that only I could hear, "Please don't. That's all. Just please don't." I stepped back. I looked at his face. He looked directly back at me, steady and calm, and I had the sudden understanding that this was not a person who panicked. This was a person who planned, and he had planned for this exact moment. The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. I stayed. I don't fully know why. Shock, I think, and something else. Some deep unwillingness to believe what I was seeing. Part of me kept insisting there was an explanation I was missing. That Caleb Park and Caleb Merritt were somehow different people and my brain was malfunctioning. That the man across the room laughing with Dana's friends and refilling champagne glasses was not the same man who had a hoodie on my couch. But he was. I watched him all night. The way he touched Dana's back when someone took a photo, the way he laughed at her jokes. The way he talked about the wedding like he'd been looking forward to it for years. He was completely at ease, no tells, no slips. Every now and then his eyes would find mine across the room and he'd hold the look for just a second, neutral and steady like a reminder. I left before the party ended. Dana hugged me for a long time at the door. "Didn't I tell you he was wonderful?" she said. I told her she'd been right. I sat in my car outside her building for 20 minutes before I could drive. The first thing I did when I got home was look him up. I'd never Googled him before, which I know sounds insane, but I'm the kind of person who feels weird about that, who wants to know someone through knowing them, not through a screen. I typed in Caleb Park Charlotte NC and got nothing useful. I typed in Caleb Merritt Charlotte commercial real estate and there he was, LinkedIn. A company website, a photo in a firm directory, same person. I sat with my phone in my hand and tried to think through what I actually knew. We'd been dating for 8 months. He'd told me his last name was Park. He'd told me he worked at a firm called Meridian. His actual firm was called Colton Group. He'd never once in 8 months asked about my family, which I now understood was deliberate. He'd compartmentalized everything. Different name, different references, probably different phone. I started wondering about his phone, about how many times he'd been texting me while sitting next to my sister. I wanted to be sick. My phone lit up. A text from Dana. Tonight was perfect. Thank you for everything. He loves you already, I can tell. I put my phone face down on the counter and didn't touch it for an hour. I knew I had to tell her that was never in question for me. What Dana had a right to know was obvious, but I also knew that telling her poorly could undo everything. The trust we'd rebuilt, the closeness we'd found could make her feel like I was the problem instead of him. I'd seen enough situations go sideways when the messenger became the target. I needed to do this right, but before I could figure out how, he texted me, not from a number I recognized, a different number. I know this is a lot. I need to explain before you do anything. Can we meet? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, okay, because I wanted to hear what possible explanation existed. And because I wanted to look him in the face when he tried to give it to me. We met the next morning at a coffee shop in a neighborhood neither of us had ever been to together. I got there first. I ordered water. I watched the door. He came in looking exactly like himself, like there was no version of normal he'd lost access to. He sat across from me. He folded his hands on the table. How long? I asked. What? How long have you been with her? He didn't hesitate. 2 years. I'd been the other woman for 8 months without knowing it. The name, I said. I use Park professionally sometimes, he said. It's my mother's name. I wasn't hiding from you. I won't, I said. Don't tell me what you weren't doing. He went quiet. Does she know about me? I already knew the answer. No. I looked at him for a long moment. Tried to find the version of him I'd thought I knew inside the version sitting across from me. They didn't line up anymore. Like a photo that's slightly out of focus. What did you think was going to happen? I asked. He had the decency not to answer that. She loves you, I said. She talks, voice cracked, and I hated it. I pressed through it. She thinks she found the one. She trusted you with everything. I know, he said, and she's my sister. His jaw tightened. I didn't know that when we met. When did you find out? A pause, longer than it should have been. About a month in, he said. I felt something cold move through me. A month in. He'd known for 7 months that I was Dana's sister, and he'd kept dating me anyway. He'd watched me help plan his wedding and said nothing. He'd kept coming to my apartment, kept texting me, kept asking me questions about my life like someone who cared, while knowing exactly what he was doing. I was going to end things with you, he said. I kept trying to find the right time, for 7 months. It got complicated. What does that mean? He looked at the table. I have feelings for both of you. I know how that sounds. It sounds exactly like what it is, I said. I stood up. I didn't have anything else to say to him. He reached for my arm and I stepped back. He looked at me and I saw something that might have been genuine fear, but I was past the point of caring what it was. Please give me a chance to tell her myself, he said. I'll tell her, I swear I will. Just give me a few days. You have until Friday, I said. If she doesn't call me by Friday, I call her. He nodded. I walked out. I drove home and sat on my couch and thought about the hoodie. I got up and found it still draped over the arm of the couch. I shoved it in a garbage bag. I thought about Dana's voice the morning she told me he'd proposed, the way she'd screamed, the way she'd cried through the whole retelling. I thought about her standing in that garden at the estate saying this is exactly it. I thought about the 200 people she was inviting to watch her marry a man who was lying to her face. And I thought about the fact that I was the event planner for that wedding, that I had poured myself into it, that some small, stupid, beautiful part of me had believed I was doing it for her. Thursday night came and went. No call from Dana. Friday morning, nothing. Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed, and for a second I thought it was her. It was him. Need more time. This will destroy her. You know it will. I put my phone down, picked it up, called my sister. She answered on the second ring, warm and distracted, clearly in the middle of something. Can I come over? I asked. She must have heard something in my voice because she stopped whatever she was doing. What's wrong? She said. I'll explain when I get there. An hour? Nadia, you're scaring me. I know, I'm sorry, I'll be there soon. I sat in my car for 15 minutes before I started driving. I rehearsed nothing because there was no version of this that went smoothly. There was only before and after, and I was about to take my sister from one to the other. She opened the door when I was still coming up the walkway. She could read my face. I watched hers shift, that specific kind of fear when someone you love is about to tell you something real. We sat on her couch. She was turned toward me with her knees pulled up, already bracing. I told her all of it. From the beginning, the rooftop bar, the name he'd given me, the 8 months, the moment he walked through her kitchen door. I watched her face while I talked, and I want to tell you, there's nothing harder than watching someone's face fall apart in slow motion while you're the one causing it. She didn't say anything for a long time after I stopped. Park, she finally said. He used Park. That's his mother's last name. He's used it before, apparently. She nodded slowly, like she was cataloging something. Were you in love with him? She asked. The question hit me somewhere unprotected. I thought I might be. She closed her eyes. Dana, I'm so sorry. I had no idea who he was. I had one blurry photo and a different last name and no reason to. I know, she said. I know you didn't know. She stood up and walked to her window and stood there for a while looking out at the street. 2 years, she said. Yes. The whole time we've been together. Yes. She pressed her palm flat against the glass, just held it there. I asked him once if he was faithful. Early on, when I was still figuring out whether to trust him, he looked me straight in the face and said, I've never cheated on anyone in my life. I remember thinking, this is a man who says true things. I didn't say anything. He's been at my apartment this whole week, she said. He helped me pick out table favors. We had dinner with my coworkers on Wednesday, and he was charming and funny, and I watched them all like him, and I thought, this is it. This is the life we're building. She turned from the window. Her face was completely dry, which somehow was worse than if she'd been crying. I need you to leave, she said. Dana, not because I'm angry at you. I'm not. I believe you. She pressed her fingers to her forehead. I need to think, and I can't do it with anyone here. I stood up. I wanted to hug her, and I didn't know if that was okay, so I just stood there. Call me, I said. Anytime, I mean it. She nodded. I was almost at the door when she said my name. I turned around. The venue, she said. Did you know which one he wanted before you booked it? I frowned. No, I gave you options. You chose it. She looked at me steadily. He told me the estate was the only right choice. Said he'd always pictured getting married somewhere like that. She paused. He must have seen the folder at your place and told me it was his idea. I thought about how many times he'd been at my apartment, how many conversations I'd had about the wedding while he sat on my couch. Yeah, I said quietly. He must have. She nodded once, turned back to the window. I left. He called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 4 minutes long, and I deleted it without listening. 3 days of silence, then Dana called. She'd confronted him. She told him everything I'd told her. He denied it at first, then admitted it, then cried, then asked her for another chance. She told me the crying had almost worked, which is the part that scared her most. How close she'd come to believing it. I gave him back the ring. She said, he actually argued with me, said I was throwing away a real relationship over something that was already over. He said it was over? He claimed it was over the night I met you, that he'd tried to end it but couldn't figure out how. Her voice was flat. Which means he had me planning a wedding while he was still seeing you. Which means I was your client while you were his girlfriend. He put both of us in the same situation and watched it happen. I sat with that. The wedding's obviously off, she said. I'll handle the vendors. You don't have to deal with any of that. Nadia, she exhaled slowly. I'm so angry at him. I'm furious, and I'm also just, she stopped. I'm sad. I thought I knew him. I know. I thought I'd finally found someone steady. I know. He was so good at it, she said. That's the part that I can't stop turning over, how good he was at it, like it wasn't even hard for him. There was a long quiet. I'm glad you told me, she said. I want you to know that. As much as everything hurts right now, I'm glad you didn't let it go. I couldn't have. I said, I know, she said. That's why I'm glad I have you, I cried after I hung up. Not sad crying exactly. Just the kind that comes when something enormous finally moves through you. The vendor cancellations were brutal in a technical sense. Most of them were sympathetic. The estate charged a penalty fee for the late notice, which Dana said Caleb should pay, and he eventually did, after some back and forth with Dana's lawyer cousin, who sent him a very pointed email. 2 weeks after everything collapsed, Priya, the same friend who had dragged me to that rooftop happy hour, sent me a link with a 3-word message. Nadia, look now. It was a local business page review section for the Colton Group, Caleb's firm. 3 women had posted reviews in the last week. Not about the company's real estate services, about Caleb, different names, different details, but the same shape of story, charming, attentive, a different version of himself to each of them. One woman said she'd dated him for a year and a half before realizing he was engaged to someone else. Another said she'd met him at a conference and he'd used a different name, though she didn't specify which one. I sent the link to Dana without comment. She replied with a single emoji, the kind that means I'm not surprised, but I still needed to see it. His firm put out a brief statement 2 weeks later saying that Caleb Merritt had stepped down from his position. I don't know the full story there. I don't particularly want to. The October 19th date came and went. I thought I would feel more on that day, but mostly I just felt quiet. I was at Dana's apartment. We ordered takeout and watched something bad on television and didn't talk about the wedding or him at all, and that felt exactly right. I thought about the version of myself a year ago, newly arrived in Charlotte, excited about the new apartment and the new city and the fresh start. I thought about the rooftop bar and the way he'd asked real questions and how good it had felt to be genuinely seen. I thought about how careful he must have been to make both of us feel that way. Dana and I are closer now than we've ever been. There's something that happened in that apartment when I sat on her couch and told her the truth that neither of us had managed to build in all the years before. Not because the situation was good, obviously it wasn't, but because she learned in the worst possible moment that I wasn't going to choose comfort over her, and I learned that she was sturdy enough to hear hard things without flinching away from the person who said them. The hoodie sat in that garbage bag for a while. I eventually threw it out. Took longer than it should have, but I did it. Last month, Dana called me to talk about maybe planning a trip, just the 2 of us, Portugal or maybe Spain. Somewhere warm with good food and no particular agenda. I told her to send me some dates.